step back, puts up the three, got hit, shot's good, and one! James Harden double team, and a chance for a 4-point play.
Alrighty, welcome back to the DC pod. I'm Christian, joined as always by Dallas diehard Darcy, where we cover all things basketball. So it is Friday, the 9th of July in the afternoon. Game 2 has just wrapped up of the NBA Finals. How are you feeling, Darcy, if you're a Bucks fan, down 0-2?
I think raw emotion from a Bucks fan, you're not feeling very good. You're feeling like we're down 2-0 and that's always quite discouraging. But 2-0 is definitely not what it used to be. I think people used to think that that was basically a death sentence for the series. I think you've got to be an optimist. And given, I suppose, the way that they were able to come back in the Brooklyn series, I think it'd be stupid to give up hope now. I would say it's potentially a missed opportunity, especially in game 2. But I think if you're a Bucks fan, you're really, really confident that game 3, when it's in Milwaukee, that things will turn around and it'll look a lot different.
Yeah, absolutely. So the NBA Finals, right? It's all about moments and taking control when you get a chance. And for me, it feels like, as you sort of say, game 2, I've got several notes down here which we can go into and discuss when we tackle game 2 in particular, about so many different moments in that game where it just seemed like the Bucks could have really brought it back and taken the lead. And just some, I wouldn't even say it was mental mistakes. It was more just like effort. It kind of feels like, for me, for game 1 and 2 summary, is almost Phoenix have wanted it more. It seems like certain stages where Phoenix necessarily haven't played perfect basketball. They have played good for longer stretches than the Bucks, but it feels like when it's coming down to effort, 50-50 balls, hustling for rebounds, one way or another, it's always ending up in Phoenix's favor. And maybe that's a thing that flips when, as you say, things go back to Milwaukee for 3 and 4. But I think the Bucks shouldn't be too discouraged. Everyone was pretty much all doom and gloom with them against the Nets, weren't they? After going down by 40 in game 2, and they ended up getting it done in 7, obviously with injury help. But it's definitely not as important, the injuries that have happened to Phoenix, but they've also had some injuries. So be interesting to see how that plays on the further we go into the series, because I would say the Suns now are down to about 6 guys they can probably trust with their injuries that they've had to 2, I'd say, pretty key rotation players for the playoffs.
How much do we know about Torrey Craig's injury? I know that Saric, their backup center, he's got that ACL, so we won't be seeing him back. But is Torrey Craig, have they announced anything about that injury, or it's just a sore knee at the moment?
They haven't, yeah. So it looked like he buckled his knee after Giannis was sort of running into it there to end to end the first half or to end the third quarter?
The third.
Yeah, it was to end the third quarter. So, it's definitely something to monitor, but Craig was getting somewhere between 10 to 15 minutes a game, sometimes a bit more. So, if no Ayton's on the floor, it seemed like they were rolling with a bit of Crowder at the 5 in particular. They didn't even try with Kaminsky, did they? Or did they?
I don't think they did for a minute, and they got lucky. They got lucky because Giannis got up and guarded him, and they just blew a foul on Giannis straight away, which I thought was, we could touch on that later. I think there's some. Milwaukee didn't necessarily get the benefit of the doubt in some pretty big decisions in the first 2 games, I thought. But, with that rotation, I think Torrey Craig off the bench, the thing that he did really well besides his defense was his rebounding. Like, he's obviously very athletic and was able to help them on the defensive glass. If they have to go smaller on their bench, then it becomes really difficult. Like, how small can you go and continue to hold your own on the glass? But I like a guy like Abdul Nader. I actually think he's, I actually liked him a lot in college, and he was with the Celtics before and OKC. And I think, at least for offense, for a few spot minutes, he can kind of give them what Craig was giving them on the offensive end. Craig hit a big 3 in the game today as well. So he still gave them impact before getting injured. So, yeah, very important.
Yeah, exactly. So game 1 now, again, you mentioned it in the preview we did for the finals. Everyone seems to be a bit of a prisoner of the moment. And so everyone's focused on obviously game 2 and, recency bias and can potentially forget what happened, only 3 days ago or 2 days ago with the first game. I think from the Bucks perspective, I was shocked about how many adjustments they made in game. You can normally criticize Coach Bud for his lack of adjustments or just being too slow to even look to change anything up with the, whether it be offense or defensive scheme. But I thought he literally, it almost felt like he tried too much, which was super interesting. If anyone can remember, they started off with switching. And that seemed to just leave Lopez or Portis on an island. Multiple occasions you saw Chris Paul go to work, Booker go to work. They then obviously tried some drop coverage, and we know what happens with that. That obviously then leads into what Booker and CP like to do, which is the mid-range. And then we saw even small ball. So Giannis played the 5, and that all seemed to happen. I wouldn't say it all happened in the first half, but it definitely all sort of came quick in that, I'd say, first 3 quarters before they kind of settled on going small with Giannis at the 5 to make their mini comeback in the fourth quarter there. How do you sort of assess that first game from either side or just the game in general, Das?
I think it's definitely, anyone who's had an experience with the, with coaching in the finals, game 1 in particular is definitely a kind of an opportunity to swing for the fences, an opportunity to try things out, because it's guaranteed it's going to be a series. You get a free shot at winning a game in game 1, and you've still got that game 2 opportunity to get the split and to try to get that home advantage coming back home. And I think Budenholzer did the right thing in trying out, some different types of defense and showing them some different looks. But I guess the problem was that some of these defensive coverages, the way that they put them on, and Chris Paul and Booker in the first game in particular were able to solve them and be really efficient scoring the ball against them. And then they've moved to a different coverage, and then they're able to figure that out. And then I don't want to say they have all the answers, but the way that they were scoring the ball in game 1, it basically made it seem like none of those coverages were working for Milwaukee. But without jumping too much into game 2, I think they really settled on something that I felt is the best way for them to do it. Milwaukee guarding this Phoenix team. I think what they do have to do is continue to full court pressure CP3 and Booker, follow them as they're coming off on ball screens. I don't want them to switch. I don't think they should be doing that. I think they should be doing everything they can to speed up the ball handler. Obviously easier said than done with Chris Paul, but speed him up and force these guys from the wings and from the 3-point line, those guys who are hanging around in the corner, all the role players for Phoenix, make those guys beat them. And to their credit, in game 2, they absolutely did. Phoenix shot the hell out of the ball from 3, and they made good decisions when they were attacking closeouts from the corner as well. So in terms of, that coverage from Milwaukee, I think they've found something that I think can work going on throughout the series. It's just whether they will stick with it to the amount that they have to get some results. It's really difficult to trust in something and have, when it's going wrong, even in the midst of a game, to stick with it and hope that eventually you guys will get on top. And that's when, being down 2-0 makes it quite difficult. You think you've thrown all these punches, you've done all these things, and it hasn't worked out, and it seemed all doom and gloom. But the reality is, if you come out and step on them and shut them down in game 3, the momentum completely switched back in your favor. Well, what do you think about the defensive coverage on the pick and roll? What do you think that, if you're Milwaukee, which one are you sticking with?
So I didn't actually mind having Drew on CP, and when they have, basically the screen there. I thought Lopez actually did a really good job today, and it was much improved when he was on the court in terms of making things difficult. So probably the best way, rather than just accepting the switch, as you say, is I would probably like them to just continue with the drop coverage and have Drew obviously go over the screen and then make him rush back to try and get a contest. I thought defensively it was pretty strong the whole game. I know people are going to criticize, obviously, the offense, and it was better today, but I get the summary from the first 2 games is you want to see, some more efficient scoring out of Drew from that point guard spot. Because, the current 2 games into the series, Booker and CP are clearly outplaying Middleton and Drew offensively, and that's obviously been a real stable for Phoenix. So that aspect, and as you say, you sort of liked what you saw with the defensive coverage and how they settled on it. It does make a big difference. I think they can get away with having a Middleton on a Booker or even a Tucker on a Booker. I just think the way CP is playing at the moment, you've got to have Drew on him for majority of the game, just how influential he's sort of been. Drew was able to, I think Booker was 9 of 23, 22 in game one and sort of got his 25 or 26, but it wasn't what he did today. Like today was pretty good from Booker. And I think you can kind of allow that to happen again because there were plenty of opportunities for the Bucks to be able to sort of steal today's game. So, that's probably how I defend it. I mean, at the end, maybe rather than sort of over-analyzing certain aspects of game one, it was just at the end of the day, and even Monty Williams said it, that there's certain times in the game where it's clear as day that, you get CP the ball and you just have, 1 out and 4 flat and just let Chris go to work. And sometimes it's as simple as that. And Chris Paul was ridiculous and, summed it up by, driving in transition and doing that, Trae Young move where you sort of stop and the defender's on your back and he had Giannis on his back and sort of sealed the game with that and one there to kind of really wrap things up. So, I think from the Bucks, you can't be too discouraged, but at the end of the day, that game one in particular was just CP was too good. It was really him putting a stamp and imprint on the playoffs for the Suns.
His shooting's, in this playoff run is the best it's ever been.
Absurd.
He's scoring at such a high level and he never looks like he's missing. And the amount of times he gets like the shooter's roll on a mid-range shot where he's completely covered and it just bounces on the rim, nice soft and drops in. It's definitely the best offensive ball we've seen from him in his career. There's no doubt. And you can't understate how good Booker was in game 2 and how important he was scoring the ball. I thought that this would be a really interesting matchup. I highlighted the head-to-head between Middleton and Booker at the beginning of the series. And really Middleton had a nice little run, especially in the third quarter of game 1. But other than that, Booker's been, he's just been a lot more forceful. It feels like when he's got the ball, I feel like he's got that first step and he's ripping by basically any guy who's guarding him. I've noticed a few times in the game today that, Connaughton did it once. And I think Giannis did it another time where they were giving Booker, basically they were opening their stance defensively and giving him a lane down into the corner. I can understand you want him to shoot potentially a fadeaway in the corner under pressure, but what he's doing is getting past him with his first step and not necessarily scoring at the rim. But I think the Bucks in general were definitely a bit guilty of this in the game, is over helping on penetration, because the amount of times that they were able to pass the ball across the court, like diagonal cross-court passes into the corner for open threes, it really hurt Milwaukee. And I think that's a big adjustment they need to make. And I think a lot of it came from Booker, because what Chris Paul tends to do, it's not really about speed and getting past you with his athleticism. But Booker, I feel like, he's probably looking like the toughest one-on-one matchup on the perimeter in this series. Like no one can stay in front of him one-on-one, or Middleton certainly couldn't today. So I think that's definitely a big problem. But what was most impressive from Booker in this game was the 3-point shooting. Whenever he got a look, whenever he had a guy one-on-one, take a jab, the guy doesn't step up on the 3, he just knocked it down in their face. There was a really critical play at the with about 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter where there was an out of control shot from Middleton in transition when he just felt like he needed to get one up, bricked a big 3, thought he was potentially fouled, and then in transition they end up turning a possible layup into a deep 3 for Booker to extend to about an 8 or 9 point lead. So, I just think the timeliness of his shooting and the ability of him to get high quality shots and make tough shots against anyone one-on-one, that was, Booker was clearly the best player in game 2 for me, at least in terms of the winning side.
Yeah. So I think what you're getting is, right, if it was Ayton and Paul, we haven't even really spoken about DeAndre and how sort of, he was pretty quiet today, but game 1, he similar to CP, he really was there to play that really strong support role and basically did his job with 22 and 19. Like that's all you can really ask from Ayton. High efficiency, doing a good job, not getting in foul trouble. I think he only had 2 or 3 fouls for the game in particular. And he's done a great job the whole series, because if the one sort of area of concern you'd have about the Phoenix side is they don't have enough big man depth behind Ayton. So the fact that hasn't been exposed because he stayed out of foul trouble has been one of the storylines of their playoffs.
It felt like Giannis got fouled 20 times in the game today, and how is eight? You look up in the fourth quarter, and Ayton's only got 2 personals. It's it's a bit mind-boggling. I suppose. Also, I'm a little bit critical of why they didn't bring Lopez back out there. You touched about how good he was on defense. He again basically didn't play in the whole fourth quarter. And if you're going to maintain that pressure on Ayton, at least to make him potentially have to play some more defense, I think you want Brook in there a little bit more. But they seem to be pretty certain that they want to close out with a small 5 and with Brook on the bench. So it'd be interesting to see if they do deviate from that in the next couple of games. With Ayton, I think in this game, the Bucks, I mentioned that I think what they need to do is continue to show and recover on the pick and roll and force the ball into those corners and make those guys make plays. I think Bucks did an excellent job of shutting down the roll to Ayton basically the entire game. And Lopez is doing a great job of potentially showing to help on penetration and then getting back to contest Ayton. A few times I thought Ayton looked a bit uncoordinated, looked like he wasn't sure how to finish around the rim when there was defense there. He got blocked a couple of times. He didn't necessarily make the next rotation pass to the other side. And I thought it was starting to unravel a little bit in terms of their offense. But he was able to stay out there on the floor defensively, credit to him. And I think CP hit him for a couple of really nice rolls in the fourth quarter that were pretty critical buckets and kind of heartbreakers for the Bucks D. But I would look for the Bucks to maintain that strategy, and I'd be interested to see if Ayton can capitalize in the rolling spot in the next couple of games.
Yeah, I think he will be a bit better. I don't actually think, if the offense isn't going there, we want to see him continue crushing the glass. And I don't think he had a real priority to do that today. He did have some offensive rebounds that were crucial in the end. But for the most part, it was polar opposite to what we saw in game 1. Like, you felt his presence, like you knew he was there, but today it just seemed he was a little bit off, but that's okay. And that sort of further adds to this plethora of options that the Suns have, because it wasn't Ayton today that supported that star guy. So I'd say Chris Paul was pretty average today. He's definitely had better games, 6 turnovers in the end. And, some of that could have been sloppy play. The other could have been the fact that Drew was on him.
They forced it out of his hands. They did. In the pick and roll, he credit to him, he gave it up as well. Like, once he saw that he didn't have the opportunity to go one-on-one and he was being pressured tightly, he got rid of it. And those guys who were giving it to, I'm sure you're about to mention Mikal Bridges, like he incredibly stepped up.
Well, so if it was Paul and Ayton in game 1, it was Booker and Bridges in game 2, right? As the real guys that were doing all the damage offensively. And Milwaukee must be sort of banging their head against the wall in certain aspects, because they do a great job to get the ball, as you say, out of Booker and CP's hands. And, you have guys like Bridges and Ayton and Cam Johnson, and at the end of I can't remember exactly how long was left in the fourth, but CP was shot clock was winding down. He drove to the baseline, got stuck, turned around, threw it back up to the elbow, and Jay Crowder was there to catch it and hit a 2. And those sort of shots big. Just kind of just daggers all sort of game long. And it furthers to your point. Sorry to the listeners, we're now well and truly in sort of game 2, if you've sort of missed where we've sort of transitioned. But I think, how many times was it just around that 8-point mark, and just for whatever reason, Milwaukee couldn't find their way to bring it to 6 or bring it to 5. And I think they managed to do it once or twice, but every single time they had it at that 6 or 5, they missed a good look, or it seemed as if Phoenix were able to punish them down the other end. And I have I've quite a few marked here. And look, if we want to go and start from the first half, pretty even for the most part. Like, it was 41 all with 5 minutes to go in that second quarter. And then Phoenix went on a 15-4 run to end the half and be up 11. So we sort of mentioned it off the top. NBA Finals is about moments and, making sure you're on the right end of certain runs. And it seemed like that was really poorly timed by Milwaukee to have a drop off there for that last 5 minutes. And then to sort of start the third quarter, things pushed out to about 15, didn't they? And it was really just a Giannis carry job. And I think we should mention just how good Giannis was, because on one leg, I think he was 15 and 22 from the field, 42 points, 12 rebounds, 4 assists. How many blocks did he have? 1 or 2? He had 2 or 3 steals. Like, I just don't know what more you could have asked from Giannis himself today in particular. And it's just a shame that he couldn't get help from either of Middleton or Drew offensively. I know Drew had 17 points today, but that was on 33% shooting again. So it's a shame because you would, in a normal year when Giannis is 100% healthy, you wouldn't feel like it's potentially a wasted or blown Giannis performance. But given his health, you don't know how much a game like today would have taken out of him, given that, he's already well less than 100%. So who knows? Giannis is Mr. Incredible. He could continue to drop, 40 points in games 3 and 4 and really continue to put the team on the back. But I think it was before getting into sort of a few of these timestamps I have in the game marked down. What did you think of the Giannis performance? Because I don't know. If I'm a Bucks fan, I probably couldn't have asked for much more.
No, I think you saw an all-time great finals performance from him. If they do go on and win this series, you'll look at this game and just how utterly dominant he was. And he did it in a way that he led from the front defensively. A couple of times in the first quarter he got out, and I mentioned this before, it's the key to them winning games is when they're able to get stops, and he's able to run down the floor like a gazelle and just destroy the rim and get a big momentum play for his team. He did it twice in the first quarter, really set them up for the way that they were going to approach the whole game. You're like offensively in that third quarter, he scored 20 points in the quarter, which is the most in the last 25 years in the finals that anyone scored. Anyone close to that is LeBron and Kobe. So the way that he dominated that quarter, every time he got the ball in the paint, it was either a dunk or there was 3 guys grabbing him around the arms. And I tell you what I really liked from him, and something I mentioned, I think earlier on in the season, we were talking about whether they could be contenders, is whether he could add a little something more to his offensive game. I think he hit 3 fadeaway jumpers in this game, and they looked really smooth. He went to the body, ate and took it, gave himself the room to spin off and shoot the jump shot. And that was really impressive. And that was the key part about why he's able to get so many points. I think he missed, he ended up not only getting the free throw line a million times, he missed, I think, 6 or 7 free throws, including 1 air ball. So that's definitely, if you could pinpoint 1 point of improvement, that'd definitely be it. But he carried them completely offensively, especially in that third quarter. And for me, he obviously gave everything he had and looked pretty tired out there by the end. But I feel like where they had chances to, you spoke about like big moments in the game where, the 50-50 ball went to Phoenix and they got a basket, or there was a big they had a great defensive possession and then Phoenix come up with an O-board and hit a 3. Or Milwaukee get a really good deflection from some quality defense and it ends up in a loose ball, which Paul grabs and then gives it and they get a layup. That kind of moments, Milwaukee just didn't capitalize on them. And I think at times they were quick to, when they felt like they needed to get back in the game, they were quick to jack up a 3. They really did not shoot the 3 ball well in this game overall. And particularly, I'm thinking about Middleton and I'm thinking about Holiday in this one. I give Holiday a small pass for his poor shooting in this game, because there was at least 5 or 6 opportunities where he went all the way to the basket real hard and missed a layup. At times they were easy and at times they were well contested, but he missed multiple layups. Middleton basically just shot jump shots the whole game. And for him to end up with 11 points in that game?
Yeah, 11 points. Yeah.
To me, that's just not good enough. It's just, he was the most disappointing guy for me in game 2. He's supposed to be the Robin to Giannis's Batman. And I don't know whether it was fatigue or anything, but he completely just didn't have it tonight. And they basically wasted a massive game from Giannis because he was incredibly special and he even hit a nice big 3. Yeah, I think this is definitely a blueprint for them to potentially win the series, is if they can continue to get similar production from Giannis, because no one has a right to be stopping him. Jay Crowder has no right to be stopping Giannis. That should be a mismatch for them. And really what he needs is other 2, close to all-star level point guards to produce something on the offensive end.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned it there with some of the key moments. And so I just said before that I have down 4 or 5 different plays that really stood out to me in that second half in particular. So you mentioned it. This one in particular, you're talking about 5 minutes left in the third. Connaughton hits a 3 to only go down 7. They managed to get a stop. Middleton brings the ball up, and as you say, just it must have been he felt like he hadn't got his own in a while, so he takes a contested three, sort of at the elbow extended with 20 seconds left on the shot clock. So it wasn't even wide open, pretty contested.
Giannis got 40 points or something at that stage. Like, just give it to him. It's going to be a foul or a bucket.
So then the Suns come down and they find Booker on the wing, as you mentioned, and he kind of holds the ball for a few seconds and then just jab steps and knocks down a three. And so the lead goes back to 10 and that timeout to the Bucks. So that's obviously one that I had noted down. Another one was when the Bucks were down 8 and Booker gets his offensive rebound from his own miss, put them back up 10. Again, maybe it was fortunate that Booker hit the front of the rim perfectly, that it came straight back to him. But still, the fact of the matter is they didn't get the board when they could have, and they could have then scored to go only down 6. Another time, 3 minutes left in the third. This is unfortunate because I know Giannis obviously had a lot to do, but Bucks were down 8. Middleton steals it from Payne, sort of knocks it out, and Middleton sprints towards the basket to try and leak out. Giannis gets the ball and brings it up, and it's basically 4-on-2. So it's Giannis and Middleton, and credit to Phoenix for getting back. And Payne steals it then from Giannis. And Payne then brings the ball up, finds, I think it's Bridges, and then he ran into Lopez. And normally that's called an offensive foul, that one. And yet it was called a foul on Lopez. So I feel like that was a bad call. And I saw a lot of people saying that Cam Payne took, a few notes out of the Chris Paul flop playbook to execute that one pretty perfectly and get the call from the ref. And I got to mention the Chris Paul flop there where, Giannis is running down the court, running down the middle, and Chris, is the guy that he knows he's about to get sealed or whatever, and Giannis is going to ask for the ball and he just flops straight away. And it's as good as Chris Paul is, it's the most frustrating part of his game. And I just had to mention that really pissed me off when I saw that, actually. But after that, where they called the foul on Lopez when it should have been on Payne, Cam Johnson gets fouled driving, and so he makes both free throws and puts him back up 10. So kind of another situation there where if Giannis can at least hold on to the ball there or even throw it ahead to Middleton, again they're potentially only down 6 or down 5. So
there's definitely some elements of luck here because, the Suns got some good breaks at some convenient times. And, sometimes that's just how it goes. But if you're the Bucks, there are definitely some elements where you just think, if we don't lapse concentration there, then we've got control of the game here. And it felt like, you don't get a lot of chances to potentially grab control of the momentum in games on the road in the finals. And, they basically just didn't capture it in either of these two games. They weren't able to secure those moments and go that extra, minute or two without making a mistake, whether that's, a defensive box out or something like that. I had to put down here that, a huge weapon for the Bucks was their offensive rebounding in this game. I thought PJ Tucker was great, and I thought that's maybe a reason they could have had Lopez in a little bit more towards the end. Connaughton did some nice things on the O glass. Obviously, Giannis was a beast down there. But, they also basically, to Phoenix's credit, they really rebounded the ball well also. They got 11-0 boards themselves and ended up doing enough defensively to, I thought Booker really fought down there when Paul's down there. He does a pretty good job boxing out as well. Obviously, Bridges come away with the 7 rebounds, and Ayton, we know how strong he is on the glass. So, I think the Bucks at times, missed some crucial defensive box outs. You mentioned that one. I think it was Tucker on that Booker miss. And those kind of, those momentary lapses kind of cost some big momentum plays in the game. And I guess that's just how it goes. And you would hope and you would probably expect that, some of those momentum plays and those big swings in the game might swing Milwaukee's way in the next one, whether it's someone from the bench doing something big like Bobby Portis having some big energy minutes or, just maybe a run of bad shooting from Phoenix, would help Milwaukee. If you miss 3s in a row, would really help Milwaukee get a few layups. And then that could really mean the difference of them getting into a proper lead for the first time in this series. But yeah, it's a missed opportunity, I think, overall. And when you look at the Suns' effort in the first 2 games, they took care of business, with I enjoyed some elements of the game plan from Milwaukee, but you got to credit the execution of Phoenix, now that they gave them a certain look in game 2 and they really trusted each other. I think in particular, Paul, obviously led by Booker's great scoring, but Paul really really trusted in guys like Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson, and you can tell when they come on the court, the way that they're shooting the ball, they look extremely confident, and they definitely trust in knowing where their shots are going to come from, and they know that it's their time to step up and hit those. And you got to give them all the credit in the world, at least for these first two games. They look as locked in as any team who should be in the NBA Finals. They're pretty damn impressive, and yeah, I think overall pretty solid performance from the Suns, and probably those critical lapses and some defensive breakdowns at times from the Bucks really hurt them.
Yeah, I for sure. I think it's amazing, as you say, that it's that the Bucks actually had 7 more offensive rebounds as a team, yet it felt like it was the other way around. But I think it was just the time when it happened and just how important it was, as opposed to the quantity. It was more the quality of the offensive rebounds and just how timely they were. Because do you remember they got 2 offensive rebounds, 4 minutes or so to go in the fourth? I think CP missed a jumper. Bridges got the offensive rebound. Booker missed a 3. Ayton then got the offensive rebound. And did he kick it to Paul in the corner? And Paul hit the 3 to put him back up 11. So it's just,
it was clutch.
Gosh, all of that sort of stuff is, and it's kind of furthers to the point, I suppose, that, you can't be too discouraged. If Phoenix were meant to win both games, they're at home. You're meant to hold home court. So it's,
I think maybe a product of that rebounding is the movement that the Suns have got. Despite the fact that their wings stay deep in the corner, basically a lot of the offense, but they know the right time to cut, particularly guys like Bridges and Johnson. They know the right time to cut. They know when to go to the offensive glass. And, when the ball's loose, when it's in broken play, in the game today, as soon as the ball got deflected or there was a loose offensive rebound, Phoenix looked so dangerous. The way they were moving without the ball, it looked like they were going to get a good shot no matter what. So I think that's credit to them. They've really nailed that style of play, and it'll be interesting to see if that translates into the road games.
Yeah. I think the other thing I'll mention with the Phoenix Suns is because this guy just played too well for me to not mention him, and that's Cam Johnson. Like I can't speak highly enough of him. He's so consistent off the bench, and he's now going to play an even bigger role with probably the Torrey Craig injury. Probably expect Cam Johnson and Cam Payne to be the first 2 guys off the bench anyway, heading into that game 3 in Milwaukee. And for the playoff stars, 8 points on 54% shooting, making 1.5 threes in 18 minutes a game. I don't know what more you could want from sort of a guy like that that's playing spot minutes, and potentially it's difficult that, you can't really find too much of a rhythm when you're playing 5 minutes here and 8 minutes here. And it's tough. And I think he's just such a smart player. I remember something in game 1, they had 4 guys out around the perimeter. Ayton was trying to seal off his man. The ball was on the wing. Ayton was on that strong side, basically trying to seal off. I don't know who would have been a smaller Bucks guard. Maybe it was Drew Holiday. And the other 3 perimeter players, other than Cam Johnson, just stood where they were. But Cam Johnson's in the weak side corner, and he sprints straight to the free throw line. Whoever has the ball on the wing just threw it straight to Cam Johnson, and then he obviously had the better angle for Ayton to find him for the entry off the seal, and it was an easy basket. But those sort of smarts are just can often go overlooked, and they're certainly underrated. And I know out of college, I think the main sort of thing that was kind of letting Cam Johnson down was his age. Everyone seemed to say, "Oh, but he's already 23." Like there's this infatuation, right, with potential. And if a guy's 18, it's how good could he be?
Could he be?
Whereas when a guy's 21 and you sort of know what he is, or 22, and he's a known product, sometimes that's better to go with. And credit to Phoenix, because I know that Cam Johnson pick, he was the 10th pick or 11th pick, whatever he was in that year. I was heavily criticized, and it's turned out to be quite a masterstroke, because Cam Johnson's been invaluable for them. And the more they sort of have these wing players that, go down like a Craig. And I don't actually think Bridges had that good of a series against the Clippers, but Cam Johnson was good against the Clippers. He seemed to pop up and hit big threes whenever it was needed. I think it's just a credit to him. How do you sort of see Cam Johnson? I know there'd be plenty of teams out there that would be wanting him now and not too concerned about the fact that, he's a second or third year player and he's 25, 26. Like he's, two wins away from being a real contributor on a championship winning team.
Yeah, I think he's shown that he can play. Like he understands the game. He, the shooting is obviously translated, and I think that was one important thing that Phoenix were looking at when they were thinking about drafting him. He's one of the best shooters that was in that class and showed that stroke definitely in college. He's got good size, and I guess from how you can tell he knows how to play the game is you spoke about his movement off the ball, and I suppose he knows where his shots are going to come from and when he needs to kind of come up from the corner and be aggressive. And one thing I really liked and wasn't sure you'd be able to get from him is the way he stepped up and he's taken the challenge defensively. And most of the time that means just trying to put your body in the way of Giannis. And then probably 90% of the time it's going to be a foul on you, just trying to get in the way. But putting your body on the line and making that effort defensively, that's just a will thing. And that's just, that kind of highlights the characteristics of a player that you need in this kind of series and this kind of time in the season. So I think he's got an interesting future. It'll be, he's really, with his size and his length and his ability to shoot the ball, it really translates beautifully into the way that, the game's being played right now. You need wing guys who can shoot the basketball. And if he can get it done on the defensive end, he could, become a big upside player. And, he's not too dissimilar to Mikal Bridges. And we spoke about this when we highlighted Bridges, I think a quarter through the season, that, we were a bit optimistic saying, well, I think I mentioned it potentially, do we reckon this guy could reach all-star level potential? And, if they're able to add certain elements to their game and develop, even though they might be a little bit older after being upperclassmen at college, they can become from good NBA players to really good NBA players. And we're kind of seeing it in front of our eyes right now on the biggest stage. These guys are showing that they've got a lot more to their game than maybe just what people can see or what people can scout in the draft.
Yeah, I think Kyle and I were hard no on that, if I remember correctly. Was it Bridges All-Star? You said, did you think he could be, or did you just put out the question?
How good can he be was basically the question.
Okay,
could he be an All-Star? And until this performance in the finals, it wasn't really a question. But the way he balled out right now, like he outplayed Middleton in this one. He really was one of the best players on the court. 27 big points and 7 rebounds. I'm not confident that he'll be able to do that in the next 2 games, but he's just won them another game in the finals, and they're just that one bit closer.
Well, I know he's played well against Milwaukee all season, especially in the 2 matchups they had. I think he had 14 or 15 in one of them and 20 in the other. So coming into obviously this final series, he at least had a couple of good games against the Bucks anyway. So maybe that's partly where the confidence has come from, and partly knowing that he was going to get some looks. If I can't remember how those first 2 games went, and if the defensive scheme from the Bucks was similar to today in terms of enforcing that they get the ball out of CP and Booker's hands. But, I think it's because I don't know if Bridges has had that good of a playoff series, to be honest, without knowing his numbers for the playoffs, handy. I would say that Cam Johnson has almost been better than him. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just how I sort of feel, because I can't remember him being too much of a standout. Again, right, it was 6 games against the Lakers, and, everyone kind of shift their focus on CP's health and AD's health, and even LeBron on a bum ankle, and then Booker dropping 47. And then obviously they swept Denver and Suns in 4, all that sort of hysteria kicked off, and And then what did they do? And then did he have, I can't even remember him doing much against Clippers if I just said that. So the focus was kind of on PG carrying him and, CP leading Phoenix against his former team. So I suppose there are a lot of storylines from this Suns postseason, and potentially he's just done such a good job that, he hasn't really popped up because he's just been doing his role. So maybe he's just, it's just a part of that. But yeah, that's sort of how I sum up him.
You can liken it in some ways to, I suppose, a performance like if you go back a couple of years in the finals to what Siakam did in game 2. I think he had close to 45 points. Like, we're not talking about anything like that from Bridges, but you can be an absolute star in your role, and sometimes it's your night. And tonight it felt like that for Bridges. He just hit big time shots and even went to the mid range and knocked down some nice contested ones. So it wouldn't shock me if from the rest of the series he goes back to averaging less than 10 points a game. So let's not flip our minds and say, all right, now he's a 20 points per game guaranteed for them. It's definitely going to be a heavy dose of Booker and CP3 doing all the scoring in these games on the road here. And Booker was awesome in the game today. 7 of 12 threes. That's just elite clutch play. So I reckon if the Bucks are able to continue to make Johnson and Mikal Bridges campaign, Jay Crowder, these guys beat them in terms of what they're giving up on the defensive end, I feel like in the long run of the series, that could swing the momentum back Milwaukee's way. If they're able to get out another similar performance to what they were able to do on Chris Paul in this game, and then if they're able to defend Devin Booker to get him to an inefficient shooting number like he did in game 1, then I think the Bucks have got a really strong shot at really dominating in 3 and 4. But having said that, the pressure is on them, and the Bucks really need to be efficient on the offensive end, not turn the ball over, and continue to, I suppose, try to find a way to get Middleton and Holiday involved, because you basically know what you're going to get from Giannis.
Yeah, I'd love and really hope to see that in game 3 and 4, the Bucks can get some more ball movement, because you've seen how awesome the Suns have been in 1 and 2 at just swinging that ball. And I know the famous clip that will be going around from today's game is really to end the half, right, where the ball gets swung around like 4. How many people's hands does it touch? Everyone on the team. 10 passes, and Crowder nearly turns it over, and then finds Bridges, and Bridges finds Ayton for the and-1. So for how long of that possession did you think the Bucks were doing a good job, and then the Suns were able to just break through in the end? So I'd love the roles to be reversed, and the Bucks to be it back at home and move the ball a bit, because in the end they can make shots from isolation and just running a pick and roll, or playing off Giannis, but you'd like to see some more ball movement. I saw a little bit of it in game 1 when they were forced to kind of do that and make a comeback. There was a few really nice plays to get Bryn Forbes some threes. There was a nice Bryn Forbes 3 in transition where Middleton leaked out, got the ball, found Forbes back on the wing, and he hit a 3, and out of a timeout, Forbes looked like he was going to screen for Giannis. Giannis had the ball in the corner, and Forbes sprints all the way around, gets just a dribble handoff and knocks down a corner 3. So just some more movement like that and less stagnant play would be what I'd hope to see in game 3. I mean, it goes without saying, down 0-2, it's a kitchen sink game for Milwaukee. You've got to obviously give your all, and I'd expect to see Drew at least score more and shoot a bit better from the field. I wouldn't necessarily say he'll end up with 30 points and, on 60% shooting, but I'd expect Drew to have at least 20 to 25 points on somewhere between that 40 to 50% shooting from the field. And they can obviously work with that home crowd because they're pretty raucous there in Milwaukee. And, I will throw this over to you unless there's anything else you want to touch on, but I would say when we next do a pod after game 4, that the series will be tied up to all. What do you think the series will be heading into game 5? Will there be a game 5? I suppose is another question.
Considering I picked the Bucks to win in 6, I'm guessing it will be 2-2. Yeah, okay. I think that will be my prediction. I think it will. You're right that it'll all have to come down to game 3 for sure. They it's just one game that they have to win, but the Bucks absolutely have to win it. It's a complete must-win, and that could make you see some nervous moves from the coach and some nervous plays from the players, especially if they go down early. But I have a feeling that they'll be coming out raring to go in that first 5 minutes. Milwaukee really did. It felt like they were dominating the first quarter of this game 2.
Very true.
But But Phoenix, they made 7 threes in the first quarter. So I think 7 and 9 from 3. So that's one way to stay in the game and keep the momentum on your side. But yeah, I feel like I would not be surprised if Milwaukee came out potentially like a 10-0 run, 10-12, 12-2 run, something like that to start the game in game 3. I reckon that's probably what we're going to see. We're going to see their best punch at home for sure. I think when you talk about their offense and you talk about the player movement, D-Book had 6 assists today. He really moved the ball well. Chris Paul, even despite his turnovers, made some really nice decisions there. I think with the Milwaukee's offense, I like the aggressiveness of Holiday. I think he needs to get to the rim like he did in the game today, even though he missed a few layouts. He needs to do that again. And they got to give the ball to Giannis, I reckon, even more than they did in the last game, because you got to find a way to get Ayton on the bench just for 5 minutes or something, because they really don't have any depth. That's a big Achilles heel if you can somehow get Ayton off the floor. But the biggest key, and probably transition from the most disappointing in game 2 to what needs to change in game 3 is Middleton. He shouldn't be shooting less shots than Holiday. Holiday obviously came out with an aggressive mindset, but you're Chris Middleton. You're averaging over 20 points a game for the season. You're a 2-time All-Star. He needs to come out and drop close to 40 like he did in that Brooklyn series when they were down 2-0 and that epic game 3 where him and Giannis, I think they both had 35 plus. So I expect Middleton to be the guy who comes out and does big damage on the scoreboard in game 3. And yeah, I think 2-2 for sure.
Yeah, Middleton's certainly capable of doing it. So I would expect that as well. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on from either of the first 2 games, or are you happy?
No, I think what the Bucks and Budenholzer have settled on is that they need to maintain the way they're playing offensively. At time, it looks, we're questioning it. And we're talking about what we'd like to see more of, but he wants them to play random. He wants them to play completely free, and he wants them to, not be running anything that Phoenix can lock in on and Phoenix can anticipate what's going to happen. So it has its advantages, but also if you're not getting the ball in the correct player's hands and you're not making your open threes, then it can become difficult to get into a rhythm. So that'll be interesting to see if the Bucks can find their offensive rhythm and get on any kind of a run, because they certainly didn't get any free-flowing offense for longer than about 3 or 4 minutes in either of those first 2 games, besides that Giannis run. And, they really hadn't found that offensive rhythm. So I will really watch out for that.
Yeah. And hopefully my X factor of the series continues to play well, because I think Connaughton's done his job, right? I think played 30 minutes off the bench today and had his 4 threes, and did have some mistakes there that you would have liked to have not see. I mean, big foul on Bridges there.
That was bad.
It was 2 minutes to go, a minute and a half to go, but still he just hit a 3 and you're down 8, and that would have been a tough shot. I would have rather seen Bridges try to make a, sort of off balance floater rather than bail him out.
I thought it was great D up until that point, or in transition, like midway through the 4th, where he just threw
the turnover. Yeah,
that was bad. Yeah, so I think Connaughton,
he's been okay.
He needs to make sure he stays out of foul trouble, because when I feel like the refs don't like him and he plays very physical and fouls a lot. But I feel like, he, in some ways, PJ Tucker's out there for a long time and doesn't put anything on the scoreboard. So I'm tempted to maybe reduce his minutes and give Connaughton a few more, because it's obvious that when he finds a stroke, they look better on offense.
Yeah. Okay, so game 3 is Monday. If you're in Australia. That's right.
11 a.m.
There's a bit of a gap between game 3 and game 4. So there's a 2-day break, obviously, between now and game 3. And then I think there's a 3 or 4 day break. So game 3 is, as you say, Monday. And then I think game 4 is not till Thursday or Friday. So bit spaced out there. Yeah, exactly. Bit of time to rest. So obviously we'll be keeping an eye on that, and then we'll be back to break down everything that goes on with game 3 and 4 late next week. So stay tuned for that. The other news to probably touch on is close to home to us, some NBL stuff, right? That's dropped. And I think this news in particular might have dropped before the finals even started. And that was the new Sydney Kings coach. Off the bat was he currently is an assistant on the Bucks. I think he is.
He coaches
G League coach.
He coached their G League. Yeah.
Okay.
Wisconsin Herd. Yeah.
Okay, Wisconsin Herd. So that's Chase Buford for anyone who doesn't know. And if the last name sounds familiar, that's because his dad, RC, is the, I think, president of basketball ops for the Spurs. And so he and Pop are the final decision makers in San Antonio. And RC Buford's been there for ages.
Years.
So his son, you'd assume, just off the last name, at least knows what he's doing.
He might know a little bit about basketball and building a team and a dynasty. He might know a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Might have a good connection anyway to get some advice if he's struggling at all. But so that's obviously a big thing for the Kings to bring a guy like that in, and you wonder what sort of connections that obviously Buford can make the most of to bring in some quality imports for the Kings in particular. So exciting to see what potentially could come from. I don't know how well Buford did as a coach for the G League. I've got a feeling they might have won something. Okay.
They won. They did.
Well, there you go. So, coming in
team in the G League,
coming in with championship experience with the G League, which is still a no joke. Like you get guys that can drop 50 in the G League and come into the NBA and be able to get double-digit scoring. So still obviously a pretty competitive league there with guys pretty hungry to get a crack at the NBA. So that's obviously a good pickup for them. Other news that dropped was some free agency stuff. And obviously the one that'll be most notable to you Australians is Delhi is coming back he's never been in the NBL, so I shouldn't say coming back, but he is coming home. And Delhi is signed with Melbourne United. So,
champs.
What do you make of that? Because that's obviously pretty big news. And I suppose, was Delhi fair to say he was on the fringe with Cleveland? I don't know if he could he have stayed around in the NBA for a couple more years if he wanted to? Do you think there would be a market for him, or does the timing to come back home? I know he's got a young family. Does that all sort of make sense to you, or how do you sort of feel about the signing?
I think it definitely makes sense, and I feel like it's only a matter of time before we see eventually. Bogut really led the way with this, with him deciding that as soon as he was on that fringe that he was going to commit to coming to the NBL for at least a couple of seasons, helping it grow and finishing his career here. And Dellavedova, I think he's definitely at that stage. I think there's no, what is he to gain personally from going and playing with a team who's developing and rebuilding, and he can help out some 18-year-old American first-round draft picks to become better NBA players, or he could come and live back in Australia, live in Melbourne where he's from, be the face of the NBL and be a massive role in an important team and in our national league where we're trying to get it nice and big. I think this is probably the perfect time. I believe there's still a clause in his contract where he can explore NBA options. So he signed a 3-year deal though, so you expect him at least at some stage in the next 3 years to come back and play in the NBL. I'm not sure. I think his probably best role would potentially be like a third string point guard. Imagine him on a team like Milwaukee. I think he's probably in a guy like Jeff Teague's role right now. So, whether that still interests him. I know Bogut was able to do that, and he hopped on the back of a late run with the Warriors there when they lost to Toronto in the finals. Yeah. But maybe that's something that Dellavedova could do. But I'm really not sure that he's that effective or that playable necessarily in a finals or a conference finals level type of thing. So I think it's the right time for him to come back, and it's great for the NBL because I feel like he'll almost definitely be the best point guard out there. Starting game one that he starts in the NBL, and it'll only lift the standard of play here. And probably definitely an emphasis for him is maintaining his fitness and maintaining his ability to play, hopefully to the next World Cup and the next Olympics for the Australian teams. I think that's basically his highest level of play, and probably anything left for him to achieve after, winning a championship with Cleveland. I think he's proven to everyone that he's able to do it in the NBA level. And now he's probably got to focus on the FIBA style of the game, and that's the NBL, and then eventually the Boomers. So good move for the NBL. And on a competitive standpoint, I think the NBL of, Melbourne have got a complete stranglehold on all the talent in the league right now. The owner, Larry Kesselman, owns this Melbourne team, and they've just won the championship in quite convincing fashion, sweeping the finals. And they've now just added they've added probably the best guard in the country, the starting point guard for the Boomers. So that spells a bit of trouble for the other teams in the NBL. I think they need to get their recruiting game on happening pretty quick, and be interested to see, who might land next in terms of imports or Australians coming back, because Melbourne United, they also got Brad Newley, who was definitely at the end of his career, but he's moved from the Kings over there as well. So Melbourne United, they're losing, hopefully they're going to be losing Jock Landale to the NBA next year. So that'll make them a little bit worse. But I know they've got Jack White also on their bench, who was played at Duke with Zion and such. So yeah, Melbourne United just going from strength to strength, and interested to see Delhi play.
And also Peyton Seaver signed with the Breakers. So Peyton Seaver was drafted 56 overall in 2013, and people would probably most remember him from his college run with Louisville. He was a pretty good guard there in the backcourt.
Was he most outstanding player in the Final Four? I think maybe he was in their national championship.
Was he? I can't remember. Yeah, he was their starting point guard on the national championship winning team, but I don't know if he won the most outstanding. He could have. I can't remember, because that was
might have been Hancock,
2013. Yeah, I can't remember the specifics of that Louisville team, but it's just another good pickup, I suppose, isn't it?
They upset my boys, Michigan. I really wanted Michigan to win that, and I thought they were a bit robbed by the officiating in that national championship game.
Was that the Trey Burke team?
Yeah, Trey Burke team, and
with Stauskas
and Karis LeVert and Glenn Robinson III and Mitch Gary.
Team.
Yeah, a really stacked team. But no, Seaver's quick and can definitely play. He'll be one of the most explosive athletes in the NBL. New Zealand as an NBL team have struggled. They obviously got the shortest of straws last season. Not get to play a home game at all, having to live away from home. They're really never a chance of making any noise. But they've got quite a bit of money behind them, and some really good some ownership interest from lots of NBA players for the New Zealand Breakers. So I think that hopefully with potentially COVID settling down a little bit in terms of travel, hopefully next season in the NBL that the Breakers will be a little bit better. And Seaver's a good signing. I know they also got Yanni Wetzel, the big centre from Southeast Melbourne's going to play for them as well. So hopefully they'll be better again next year, I think, the Breakers.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think Sean Marion's on the ownership team for the Breakers, and the guy that runs
championship winner knows what he's doing.
Yeah. I think the CEO or the guy that runs the things there, Matt Walsh, is I think he's American anyway, and he played basketball anyway at college, and I don't know if he played for Wisconsin or he played for someone, but he obviously has still a lot of connections in the US as well. So part of the reason why they're able to get some imports, and they picked up some other French guy. I can't remember exactly what his name is, but I saw that young. So I don't know if that's part of the Next Stars program or the thing they sort of had with LaMelo and a few of the other young guys. So anyway, it sort of adds further to the intrigue of the league, because you obviously have Cotton coming back from injury, and I suppose you got Kiefer Sykes there from Southeast Melbourne, and now you obviously have Delhi, Peyton Seaver, and you've got the Webster brothers in the Breakers already. So certainly makes things a bit more interesting.
Tyler Harvey, the import for for Brian Goorjian and the Illawarra Hawks, who signed up for 3 more years. So that'll almost keep them in relevance. As long as they've got him and Brian Goorjian in the mix, they're going to be tough. Yeah,
definitely. Okay, well, is there anything else there, Darcy? Anything in general? It doesn't necessarily have to be NBA or NBL related. Well, there's some exhibition games happening in the next few days. So Australia is going to play the US and Nigeria in Vegas.
Mm-hmm. There's going to be a schedule. I think every team plays 4 games, and I think it's 12 in total that are being broadcast on ESPN. So make sure you check those out. I think it's starting on Sunday. The Australian team has a good roundup game, and it's only against quality teams. All the games are, basically Olympic level competition. And even though you might not see necessarily the desperation to win in the fourth quarter, you'll be seeing guys going at it full pace, and you get to see what kind of this group of Australian team and coached by the way that Brian Goorjian wants to do it, you're really going to see something interesting. And make sure you check out the women, because they're just as good, if not a better shout to potentially come home with a gold at the Olympics. yeah, I think they're almost a certainty to get a medal if they get through their quarterfinal in a good stead. So, yeah. And if you get to check out the American women's team, they're absolutely stacked as well. So some good basketball around the corner while we're locked down at home.
Thanks very much, everyone, for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed listening to this episode. And we'll be back next week to go over it all again. And hopefully we've got a cracker Game 3 and Game 4 to discuss and speak about.
Absolutely. Cracker of a finals coming up. I think we both think it's going to be an epic. So let's keep our fingers crossed for that. And all our listeners out there, make sure you stay safe and take care of yourself if you're in lockdown anywhere around New South Wales or in Australia. Take care of yourself, stay healthy, and enjoy your hoops.
Yeah, well said. Okay, see you later, guys.
Peace. Oh, that's all.